Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today, we finna react to the rise and fall of the CW. Damn, the CW falling off. Damn, they just picked up NXT. So the CW fell off already, and they picked up NXT. They just picked up NXT. Damn, they falling off like that. Damn. That's what they get for not keeping them UPN shows. If they would have kept them UPN shows, you would still have some loyal viewership. Bro, CW, all you had to do was just keep some of the UPN shows, and you would have had a loyal following. Cause these white people ain't gonna stick around. It's gonna be other shit that's gonna pop up on these cable networks that's gonna outdo what y'all doing right now. But if you would have kept the UPN shows and would have kept it in for the niggas, you would still have a loyal fan base. Y'all just don't understand how loyal black people are to certain shit. As long as you keeping us entertained, we gonna stick around. But nah, what y'all want to do? Y'all want to cater to them white people. Look what happened. Now you in a bind. Shit, fuck CW. That's what y'all get. Y'all should have kept all the black shows instead of canceling all of them. Punk asses. Anyways, though, without further ado, let's get right into this.
Captain Midnight.
A few weeks ago, the CW network announced the cancellation of a shocking number of shows. Everything from reboots like Charmed and Roswell, New Mexico, to entries in once thriving franchises like Legacies, their second Vampire Diaries spinoff, to even some Arrowverse shows like Batwoman and Legend of Tomorrow, among others. The TV network, which in previous years just shrugged off low linear TV ratings as a thing of the past that didn't really bother them much, has now brought down the axe on a huge portion of their programming slate. So, what changed? Well, that's what I want to get into this week, because to figure out why the CW is struggling now, it's important to understand why the network was formed in the first place, and how that arrangement may have ultimately outlived its usefulness to the giant corporations who created it. Before I really get into it, I will say one thing. If you're expecting this video to just mock the CW, which I'll admit is very, very easy to do, that's not what I'm aiming for here. Despite the network's many shortcomings, I have always appreciated the CW for its commitment to making ambitious, full-season genre shows on a shoe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do. I'm pretty sure you love all the mayonnaise and tuna that's over here. I'm pretty sure you love all the mayonnaise and tuna that's over here. I'm pretty sure you do, sir. Fuck out of here.
String budget. When it gets talked about online these days, I feel like the conversation usually gets reduced down to just the Arrowverse, when to me, the network is a lot more than that. From season 3 of Veronica Mars, to Reaper and Everybody Hates Chris, to Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and the early seasons of The 100, not to mention the odd choices like reviving Whose Line Is It Anyway. The CW has a fairly long and kind of strange history of shows. Some of them worked, many of them didn't. But at its best, the CW was unpredictable and fun, something that I think was slowly drained away from it over the years as the Arrowverse formula took hold. My point is though, I'm gonna try to take the network seriously in this video, late series Riverdale and all.
Weekdays on the CW. Make your resolution to laugh 5 days a week, starting with All of Us.
Let's go!
An important thing to know about the CW is that it was born from the merging of two rival channels, the WB and UPN. The WB was, of course, owned by Warner Brothers. The ownership of UPN was a bit more convoluted, but basically it boils down to being owned by the company we now know as Paramount Global, the owners of CBS. And I do say they were rivals, because at one point in the early 2000s, there was definitely no love lost between the two, and they were often bidding against each other to land the same shows. UPN's relationship with the WB got even more complicated when they managed to nab Buffy the Vampire Slayer, one of the WB's flagship shows, for its last 2 seasons. And showrunner Joss Whedon's comments after the deal, referring to the WB as his quote, fat old ex, only added fuel to the fire, and likely contributed to the Buffy spinoff Angel getting cancelled by the WB on a cliffhanger, despite being the network's second highest rated show.
That was dumb.
That's probably a story for another video. The point is, these were two competitors that were fused together by their owners in 2006. This was especially helpful for UPN, whose flagship franchise show Star Trek Enterprise had been floundering in the ratings and canceled a year earlier. But many of the shows that both networks had did continue, like the WB's Supernatural and Smallville, as well as UPN's Veronica Mars. And while the CW never really came near the ratings of big US networks like ABC and NBC, it wasn't really designed to. Its solid hits like Supernatural attracted a younger demographic than the aging CBS audience, and the budgets were generally cheaper, usually filming around Vancouver to take advantage of the tax credits. Though there were exceptions, like one of their biggest hits ever, Gossip Girl, which was filmed on location in New York. And because of the younger demographics, these shows often had passionate fan bases online, which was pretty attractive to advertisers, despite the fact that they were rarely ratings powerhouses. The CW was never the biggest game in town, not by a long shot, but their programming strategy was working, often building off the template handed down to them by past shows like The X-Files, Buffy, and Beverly Hills 90210. And in a network TV landscape that was still so dominated by cop and doctor shows, that really helped them stand out. 2009 was an especially good year for the network, as it saw Gossip Girl continue to do really well, and the introduction of The Vampire Diaries. Based on a series of 90s novels, the show was developed by Scream screenwriter Kevin Williamson and producer Julie Peck, and was pretty clearly intended to capitalize on the success of the Twilight franchise. And it really worked. Not only that, by season 2, it had turned itself into a well-oiled twist delivery machine, with 22 full episodes of fun and creative roller coaster plotting. I'm not going to sit here and claim Vampire Diaries was ever The Sopranos or The Wire or something. It wasn't. It was always a fairly cheap show with a good deal of amateurish acting, but it managed to really grab viewers with its constant, exciting narrative momentum. Eventually, that kind of left the show with nowhere to go, but in those first few seasons, it was really firing on all cylinders. By the end of the 2000s, the CW really did have a decent amount of successful shows to call their own. The early 2010s brought a huge change in the TV landscape, of course, and to their credit, I think the CW responded to those changes pretty well. In 2011, they struck a deal with Netflix that was, at the time, probably the smartest possible thing they could have done. Netflix was growing like crazy, and making a deal with them not only meant that they could make up for the revenue lost by the slowly dying DVD market, it also put their shows in front of millions of new people. Young adults were becoming far more likely to pay for Netflix than cable, and the CW had plenty of shows aimed at young adults. It was kind of a win-win, and it was really the deal that would go on to define the network in the coming decade. Over time, the CW's business model would shift. Instead of depending on advertising revenue from their broadcast channel, it would instead focus on selling the rights to its shows to various streaming services. Netflix definitely being the biggest one, but also other services throughout the world. Enter the Arrowverse. So I've been asked to make a video about these shows a lot throughout the years, and I never really have because honestly, they were often not all that interesting to me. I thought the early seasons of Arrow and Flash were promising, and I came to enjoy a couple of the shows later on, but for the most part, I don't know, these shows don't do all that much for me. Something like The Flash, even at its peak, didn't reach the heights of the CW's The 100, which started the same year. Yes, The 100 absolutely looks and sounds like a CW show. If that's a major turnoff for you, I get it. But by season 2, the lead characters were put in such interesting and difficult moral situations that the show refused to sidestep or back down from, and I came to really respect it for that. The morally gray world of The 100, at least for a time, put it in the same league as TV sci-fi favorites like Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine for me. Something that the Arrowverse just never really achieved in my opinion. Though I do want to give a special shout out to the now cancelled Legends of Tomorrow, which managed to bring Silver Age of Comics goofiness to our TV screens in a very entertaining way. From a network perspective though, I totally get why the Arrowverse was a no-brainer. When the CW shifted their model to selling programming to streaming, it was just a natural fit. What was an easier sell to streamers? A brand new show or a well-known brand like DC? I think the answer is pretty obvious. So they went all in, eventually even making most of their non-Arrowverse shows kind of known quantities too, with reboots of Charmed, Dynasty, and others, and of course Riverdale, which was based on the Archie comics. All American was kind of the exception though, a show that did enormously well for them on Netflix. Though to be fair, even that was a pretty obvious fusion of the OC and Friday Night Lights into one soapy throwback. Anyway, all of that was working really well for a while, but eventually I think it became clear that the changes in the TV industry were catching up to them. The CW had always made inexpensive shows, but for a long time, that wasn't at all abnormal for TV. Back in 2007, no one would turn on an episode of Supernatural and expect it to have the production value of a big budget movie. But the advent of streaming services, with seemingly unlimited investor money to just throw at original programming, as well as cable channels going all out with expensive production of genre shows like Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead, the CW was suddenly cast in a very different light. It also didn't help that the channel was now known for making superhero shows, a genre that audiences could constantly see on the big screen with massive budgets. And the comparisons were not flattering, with the often extremely flimsy effects of the Arrowverse shows being mocked constantly online. What had been acceptable at the start of the decade was now being perceived as painfully creaky and at times embarrassing by the end of it. And since the CW's business model relied on its shows being fairly cheap to produce, that was kind of hard to change. But the real blow that was dealt to the CW ended up being at the hands of its owners. Back in 2011, Warner Brothers and Paramount were more than happy to drop shows on Netflix for some fast cash, but now that strategy was looking pretty short-sighted. You know what happened next. Warner launched HBO Max, and Paramount created CBS All Access, which is now called Paramount Plus, and they severed the CW's ties to Netflix, with a few CW shows remaining on there kind of being leftovers from old deals. Suddenly, everything had changed. The CW's business model, which had helped it get by in the waning days of broadcast TV, no longer made much sense to its owners. HBO Max did scoop up a lot of its DC content, but it was clear that both companies' interest in the network had evaporated. And with the Netflix deal gone, it seemed that the CW racked up enormous debt. Now it's looking very likely that the Nexstar Media Group, the largest owner of local TV stations in the US, is set to buy 75% of the CW for the not so high price of $0. But the agreement would include taking on a lot of that debt. So where does that leave the network? Honestly, in a very weird spot. With Nexstar wanting to shift the CW away from streaming deals, strip it down a bit, and focus on broadcast TV. So, expect CW shows to get even more low budget in the future, or at the very least, expect far less shows to come out of the network. Either way, it's hard not to draw the conclusion that they're on very rocky ground here in an ever-shrinking part of the TV industry. Still, if the CW can refocus its efforts and make some new, fun, and scrappy low-budget shows, it would kind of bring the network full circle. And at this point, maybe that's the best it can hope for.
Supernatural returns. Season premiere Thursday, October 4th on the CW.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined.
Well, I think CW's next plan is to get into live sports. I think by them obtaining NXT from WWE, I think that's a good step in the right direction. But it'd also be nice if y'all could get into other sports, you know, bring back local basketball game, bring back the local teams for basketball games, you know, bring it back to the old days like y'all did with UPN, you know what I'm saying? That would be nice, but we'll have to see. I think live sports is going to be their next move going forward for the CW. But anyway, so let's just go back. Do it for this one, man. I will see you all in the next video. Till then, peace out. Hey, CW did it to themselves, for real. You should have kept the black shows. One-on-one should have never ended on a cliffhanger. You bastards.